I'm loving the pop off.
What's good? Welcome back to the Pop Off Podcast, a conversation show about Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs, and what the hell should this organization do to surround one of the greatest talents that we've seen in NBA history, a 20-year-old freak, the guy who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who was on the All-NBA Defensive First Team, averaging 21, 10, and almost 5 stocks a game. I'm your host, Ralph Compiano, and I'm joined by Ben Masterson, Spurs expert, fan, and Wemby appreciator. So my first question is, we didn't talk pretty much all regular season on the pod.
Yeah.
You're 82 games down with this dude. What's it like to have somebody like this as not just the face of your franchise, but probably the face of the league here in the next year or two?
I don't remember, since being a kid, feeling such joy and wonder just watching the game of basketball, because it was anything on any. It was a Tuesday, shitty day at school, long day, logging a 13-hour day after basketball practice. I come home and the constant is that Wemby is going to do something that makes me forget about all the BS of my day. He was a joy, man. Through the tough winter months, he was my light. He was my rock. It was amazing. I watched as many games as I could. They were so bad at the beginning of the year. Had to watch it. It didn't matter. I don't care how much they were losing by. It feels like it's I'm witnessing the good times as they're happening. So it feels like I just have to be in tune to every single thing I can see about Wemby.
Well, my second question is, what about the rest of the roster? Because we're going to talk about how to build around this guy. We're going to give him a report card for his rookie year, but what about the Trey Jones and the Jeremy Sohans and the Vassell's and the Keldon Johnsons? Because these are guys that you've built relationships with the last 3-4 years, right? You have a 20-year relationship with Popovich, but those guys, are you souring them a little bit? Are you confident in them? Did you see strides? And ultimately, how do you think that this roster, as currently constructed, complements Victor Wembanyama?
Yeah, I think people were really quick to jump on the whole Sohan point guard experience and kind of the clunkiness that ensued. But I really think that was necessary if Sohan's going to stick around on the team. If you want him to be that dog, then you need him to kind of develop his game on an offensive level where he can play next to Wemby. So I like the experiment. I like that they tried it out. It didn't work all that well, but I do think it kind of did, because towards the end of the season, you saw Sohan looked a lot more comfortable with the ball than he did his rookie season and even earlier on in the season. So I think Keldon feels like it's tough, because Keldon's been my dude since they drafted him. I love his intensity. I love his energy. I love how hard he plays, but it feels like he almost has to be the first casualty that goes. If there's any value for him in the trade market, it seemed like he fit the least. He seemed like the odd man out for most of the season. And then I think really the only people that are locked in you keep are Vassell and Sohan. I don't know if everyone feels the same about Sohan, but I think with what Wemby is and how Sohan kind of complements him, especially on the defensive end, that's someone you need to keep around. But everyone else, I think, I'm trying not to get too emotionally attached to the team, because I feel like a lot of change is necessary to get the team around Wemby that he needs.
Okay, so we'll do that in a little bit, but let's do just big perspective, big picture on Wemby's rookie year. I looked at Bleacher Report earlier, and they had ranked the top 10 rookie seasons of all time, and he was at number 5. And he was ahead of guys like Magic Johnson, who won the Finals MVP as a rookie, stepped in for Kareem when Kareem got hurt, played center in that series, Larry Bird, Luka Doncic, Blake Griffin, who had a tremendous rookie season coming off of the injury, and LeBron James. Right, so he is in really high esteemed company. 2 of the guys on this list are also Spurs big men, David Robinson and Tim Duncan. So I just want to put into perspective essentially what Wemby did. So we'll go 5-1. So 20 years old, 23, 24, Victor Wembanyama, like we said earlier, all defensive first team, second in defensive player of the year, loses to his fellow Frenchman, Rudy Gobert. I think there was a sincere argument for Wembanyama to be the defensive player of the year. We saw all of these reels and clips of the quote-unquote Wemby effect and people literally having what they thought were wide open transition layups and then doing the Steve Nash dribble around the hoop and just looking for anywhere else to go with the ball away from him. 4.8 stocks per game. You'll hear us use the word stocks a lot in this conversation. It's a term we're borrowing from Bill Simmons. It's just combining steals and blocks for a season. What's their average for that? So he has 4.8 stocks. He led the league by an entire block per game. He averaged 3.6 blocks per game. Walker Kessler, Brook Lopez, Anthony Davis, generational defender, and Chet Holmgren, another stellar rookie, were all in that 2.4 to 2.3 block range. Any other year, that's going to be the top of the league until this guy comes in. Number 4 is Shaq. Okay, so Shaq, a little bit of a different body than Wemby coming into the NBA, right? More suited for the 92-93 season. 23 points, 14 rebounds, 2 assists, 4.2 stocks. What's fascinating about these guys ahead of them is all of them finished top 10 in MVP voting. They didn't release the top 10 in MVP voting. I know he probably wouldn't have finished in there, but I would be curious where he would have finished in the MVP voting if we went to, like, let's say 25 or something like that. Like, does he finish 17th in MVP voting or something like that? So Shaq is just phenomenal. And then Duncan. So this was the year that we were born, 97, 98, 21 years old.
Yep.
21 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 3.2 stocks, 5th in MVP, all NBA first team, all defensive second team. He was an all-star, and he was 5th in defensive player of the year. So I want to stop at Duncan. What similarities are you seeing between the two of them? Because this is a pedigreed franchise that has been predicated around their big men, right? You win 5 championships with Tim Duncan. Are you seeing similarities between the two of them? Do you think that Pop is seeing those? And what's kind of like, is it the cerebralness? Is it the fundamentals? Is it the teammate like behavior? What is it about those two guys that seem similar?
I think it all stems from their mentality and kind of how they carry themselves as a professional and just as a person. I think they have a really kind of like yin and yang, just balanced out perspective on life. And I think it's really calming, but it's also like the way that he embraces the city. This is a superstar that was kind of tailor-made for San Antonio in terms of being a small market. And San Antonio is on the rise, but they're still, considered a small market. They have a really diehard fan base because there's nothing else in San Antonio to root for. You have like a minor league baseball team, and that's really it in town. So
big women.
And Wemby's just, yeah. Honestly, that's a bad rap. That's a bad rap for San Antonio.
They're not that bad. But you're telling me they're better than the women in Des Moines? Maybe I'll move down to San Antonio, get season tickets, and start exploring Hinge down there.
That's a tight contest, Des Moines and San Antonio women. But just how he can't handle himself, and then how he's constantly willing to learn about the game. I'm watching him. The other thing was like just seeing him progress through the year and pick up on stuff that he was getting torched on to start the year, and just how quickly he was evolving and learning. It was like one of those. It really was like a sci-fi movie where like the alien is constantly evolving like in front of your eyes, and it's so rapid and unexpected. And I don't know, just how he absorbed the game and how he was willing to learn, and just how all around humble he was. It seems like every single time he has the opportunity to ease Spurs fans' minds, he does it. And it's been a joy.
Well, I love that point about his humility, but there's also like a competitive fire in him. Yeah. Like he's humble amongst his teammates, but he wants to kill the opposition. And I think that's one of the more understated things about Duncan. Like Duncan, like seems like the nicest guy in the world, right? But you would watch him and he's like, no, I'm stepping on people's throats. And Wemby is the same attack mode.
Yeah. Anyone that played against Duncan has a Duncan story about him being kind of like a subtle dickhead, or just kind of getting in the opponent's head without having to need to do a whole lot. And yeah, like there were moments, and this is where like he's playing into San Antonio, man, because San Antonio is building up this Chet and Wemby beef. And it felt like every single time he made a statement in one of those games, it meant more. Like he wants that. He cares. He heard that, and he like, I don't know. It's just, he has the humility, like you said, but he wants to kill everybody, and it's so fun to watch.
And your point about him evolving in real time, I was a casual Wemby watcher this year. I probably watched 14 Wemby games this year, right? I didn't log all 82 like you did, like a sicko. But I remember watching them specifically against the Suns, like I think like in back-to-back weeks against each other. And just that 7-day evolution of how he guarded Durant and how he attacked their defense. Like I was like, oh, this is weird. This is actually kind of creepy. Like how quickly he's like learning on the fly.
That was the thing too. If you got him once in the beginning of the season, if you played them a week later, he already knows how to play you. Like he's learned kind of how to take away what you want to do. and just kind of seeing that composure and that intelligence from a rookie, and just seeing how the game was really slowing down for him. And once he got his conditioning, once he got his pace, it was fun to watch him really figure out the league and start to go at people.
So the number 2 guy on Bleacher Report's list is another Spurs man, and that's David Robinson. This was his age 24 season. So for comparison's sake, Wemby, 20 years old this year as a rookie. The reason he came into the league, because when he was 24, I totally forgot this, is he was drafted 2 years prior, but he went and served in the military for 2 years. So like we talk about, Blake Griffin taking a year off because of his injury, Joel Embiid, Chet Holmgren. David Robinson went and served for his country, and then he came back and he averaged 24, 12, and 2 with 5.6 stocks. He finished 6th in the MVP voting. He was all defensive second team, all NBA third team, and the rookie of the year. And then, ends up winning 2 titles with the Spurs. And then number 1 is Michael Jordan, 84, 85, age 21, averaged 28 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3.2 stocks, finished 6th in the MVP, all NBA second team, rookie of the year, played all 82 games that year at 38 minutes a game, which is just insane. So when you put it into perspective, that's an A+ season. David Robinson, A+, Tim Duncan, A+. I think he's right there at an A. The only thing that I would have liked to see for him to get to an A+ is he played a little bit less than 30 minutes per game. And that was cautionary, right? The Spurs didn't want to overload him with too much. I think he started playing more minutes towards the back half of the season just to get him out there, get him more reps. Shot 46% from the field, right? For a 7'3" guy, we probably want to get to the 50 to 55 range, which he will over time. And then 32.5% from 3. Per 36, he averaged 26, 13, and 5 with 5.8 stocks. So the assists are there. The boards are obviously there, and the scoring is there. But I want to ask you about him as a jump shooter specifically. Is there a confidence that you have when he pulls up and you can tell that he's going to take a jump shot? I'm not exactly sure who I would compare it to. Maybe like a Jokic. Like Jokic, it gets to the point where it's like if he takes a shot, I feel like it's a good shot, and I feel like it's going in every time the ball is released from his hands. Where there are other guys like, let's take another, Anthony Davis now. I used to be really confident in that jumper. 16 to 18 feet, I thought it was cash. But he's kind of lost some of that over time. Where does he fall on that spectrum as far as I'm confident in this dude knocking down a mid-range J and then stepping out to 3 and knocking one down, specifically as a fan?
Mid-range is automatic. When he gets close enough to the basket, it's just he uses his length, his height so easily. He just drops it in. And then from 3, it really looks like the ball is on a string when he releases it. Mm-hmm. It's so fluid, and when he catches it, it goes straight through the hoop, which is just, I don't know. His shot looks really, really good, and I think that is going to continue to develop, and I think that his numbers look better when he stops settling for shots. I think the beginning part of the season, it was more, okay, I'm going to space out, I'm going to figure out the game a little bit, and he wasn't as working to find his spots down low as much as towards the end of the season. Right. And that's when you really saw his numbers start to explode. That's when assist numbers went up, rebound numbers started to go up. I think once he started to really figure out that he could attack and where to get to his spots and how to get into the mid-range, instead of just being bumped out. Because early on in the season, he couldn't really meet the physicality. I felt like he kept getting beat to his spots and bumped out, and he had to settle for a 3-pointer. But kind of going to that confidence, I think I wanted him to shoot the ball every time down the court. It felt like if he ended with a 3-point jump shot and it was a miss, it was one of the best shots we could take because it looked so good. It looked so open, and I'm confident in him shooting the ball.
Yeah, that's fascinating because there's a kid on my team, and I'd say anytime the possession ends with you shooting the ball, it's a good possession. Because he doesn't have that explosive level of confidence yet. He doesn't realize how good of a scorer he is. And you have to kind of you have to tell them to be a little bit more selfish. Sometimes it's selfish if you're passing up the open look. Take it every time you can get it. And also he doesn't have guys to create
kind of early on in the season.
Yeah, he didn't Sohan was playing point guard for the first 40 to 50 games of the season. So it's not that's a natural creator for a Wemby, right? He needs somebody to go out there and get a shot for him.
And I think so. The other thing I want to push back with the Sohan argument is we saw Wemby thrive with that. You know what I mean? We saw him develop as a rookie like we haven't seen. And the argument with the Sohan thing was, well, it's going to hurt his development. And that's why I wasn't so worried about it, because if you have a player like Wemby, he's going to develop regardless. And then you plug in that point guard, and he kind of already knows how to play the NBA game and work off a point guard a little bit more. So I wasn't too concerned with that. But I mean, looking at this list and looking at where Wemby finished, and I really just think all defense first team, that's like the cherry on top.
Yep.
That was not really expected going into the season. I kind of wanted to temper my expectations, but getting defensive player of the year votes and really having a legitimate case and not just being like he's, the fun young rookie, but really having evidence behind why he could be it. This season was an A+ to me. I know there are some, but I also feel like the concerns that like you raised, which are valid, are number one. Like I think he's just going to naturally work them out, and then I think the team's just going to get better. Like I trust San Antonio as an organization to build the ideal team around him.
Oh, 100%. As far as the ceiling, like after like going into the season, we had the highest expectations in the world. They're even higher now somehow. Like I genuinely think that he's going to be one of those guys for a long period of time. And knock on wood, he remained healthy.
The expectations stress me out.
Right.
Yeah. No, the expectations stress me out because Chris Broussard was like, if he's not Kareem on crack, it's a fucking disappointment. And how does someone live up to that expectation so calmly? And he did.
He really did. It's unbelievable. All right, so now let's move into the conversation where we want to build around him, right? So we're playing GM here. I looked at two similar paths that I think they have resulted in championships. 2024, 2023. You look at the Celtics and you look at the Nuggets. Two homegrown teams for the most part that have made some key acquisitions. The Nuggets go out and get Aaron Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to put them over the hump. The Celtics, they go out and they get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. That takes them over the hump. Last year, or 2 years ago rather, they got Derek White, right? So you look at these champions, you emulate what they have done on both ends, offensively and defensively. What Kristaps did defensively in the finals, which we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about the finals at all. He wasn't just huge on impacting like the spacing on offense, but also defensively, he gave them a rim protector that you don't have to block every shot. You just have to have a presence in the paint that changes shots. Nobody is going to do that more than Wemby over the next 15 years, like at all. Like even if he only plays 8 years, he's going to change more shots in 8 years than anybody else will in 15 years. Like that's how much he changes shots defensively. Yeah. I mean it. Like the amount of times a game where I'm just like, Josh Hart is like getting scared to attack the rim. I'm like, Josh Hart isn't scared of anybody. Like, what the hell is happening? And they have identity
3-on-1 and they all just clear out.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's got to be the most confusing thing as an NBA player to be like, I don't have this wide open layup that looks like a bunny. But yeah, I think so part of this is I entirely agree with you when looking at this is the roadmap, these past two champions and kind of how they've interacted with or built around a star or formed their team together. I think number one, this kind of shows the importance of Sohan. You have a wing defender who I'm trusting Wemby on everything offensively. Defensively, I mean, Carter sent that graphic in the chat today about Sohan's one of the first, or he's taken the toughest matchup, and I have full confidence any single time he matches up on a team's best player. So I think you keep him. I think Vassell is kind of a lock too, like I was talking about, just because he has the shooting, he has the playmaking ability that's starting to emerge a little bit, and he has the spacing. Is there anyone you kind of really want to see them add this year?
So, all right, we'll get to that. But to the Sohan point.
Okay, that's later.
Yeah,
okay.
The Sohan point I think is fascinating because this experiment they had with him at point guard, they're not going to play him at point guard next year. But what they were trying to do, I think, was to make him more comfortable as a playmaker, right? And that's what Draymond's primary responsibility has been on the offensive end for the Warriors over the last decade and a half, is especially in those short roll situations, if you can use him as a screener, dump it to him in the roll, he doesn't have to score as the roller. Then we're creating an opportunity that Boston did so well in the finals of just getting an advantage with numbers. 4-on-3s, 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s. If they trap the ball handler, dump it off to Sohan, and then he can create from there, right? And then the Celtics did a great job of having usually a guard. It was White or Holiday in that dunker spot, 5 to 6 feet from the basket, ready to catch and finish. So I think that's kind of what they're thinking is, can we use Sohan to be our Draymond offensively and defensively? Nobody's saying he's going to be Draymond. Draymond is one of the 100 most important players of the last 40 years, right? Like he's unbelievable. But if he can just be 80% of that, and you have Wemby next to him, it's going to work. The next person we got to look at is the Nuggets, Jokic, right? I was looking at usage percentages for the top scorers in the NBA last week, And Luka's is ridiculously high. Like it's like 36%, right? He dribbles the shit out of the ball. It's easy to load up your defense against a guy like that. I find it hard to believe that an offense built around a superstar like that, a heliocentric offense, is going to win a title. The Nuggets, on the other hand, kind of take the opposite approach, where Jokic's usage percentage is like 25%, and he dribbles like 5 to 6 times per possession max. Like he has 1/3 the amount of dribbles as a Luka. I think you look at Jokic, you look at what the Sixers did with Embiid this year specifically, and you look at what the Heat have done with Bam the last couple of years, and you think about Wemby in that mold, right? He doesn't have to be Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, rim running guy. He is tall enough, and he's a good enough passer that you can use him in the Jokic role. And I think that there's going to be a year where he gets like 7-8 assists per game just because the amount of attention that is on him if they surround him with the right guys, right? Surround him with shooters. Surround him with guys that can cut and finish. So I'm interested to talk about who we're targeting this offseason, but I think that's the model on offense that you have to follow. And it's difficult to become Jokic. He's one of the best offensive players ever, but I think that's the model that you...
But I think if anyone can do it, it's Wemby.
I agree.
Like the passing, once again, we're talking about progression. The passing is probably the thing that I've been most impressed with, just developing throughout the course of the season and just kind of the reads that he had. And I swear to God, if I saw another beautiful Wemby dime that just resulted in clanking it off the glass for 3, like we need to get, and we'll talk about it later, but you're right. The spacing needs to be allowed. And you do that with shooters and people that can, really keep a defense honest.
And I think that he wants to be Kevin Durant. Like he talks about how that was his favorite player coming in the league.
That's his guy.
He watches a lot of KD tape. I want him to want to be Jokic. Like that's what I want him to want to be. Like I want him to be a hybrid of Giannis and Jokic and KD all in one, because I think he could be that eventually. So I did want to say, let's just take, during the Celtics and Nuggets evolution, let's take Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown out of the equation, because it's going to be like impossible to replicate that talent at wing and back-to-back drafts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, wings are the ones that make the difference. Even if we're not looking at the Celtics and the Nuggets or the Mavericks even, and we're looking at the Timberwolves, that was the difference in their series. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, guys who can guard. This league is so much about putting the ball in the basket, but I think more than ever, it's becoming about, can you get a crucial stop and can you make it as difficult as possible for your opponent to score? I think that's why the Thunder traded for Caruso. They're like, fuck it. I don't need somebody to create shots because Shea's going to be able to do that a lot. Jalen's going to get better at that. Chet's going to knock down open Jays. Kayson's going to get better. Dort can knock down open Jays. Let's just bring in Caruso to make it difficult. So I wish that they would have gone in Caruso, honestly. And then defensively, you want those solid guards. You want Derek White, Drew Holiday at forward. You want Sohan as Aaron Gordon or Draymond, whoever it might be. And then offensively, you want one really dynamic guard with a couple of guys that can come in and log a good 12 to 15 minutes. A Peyton Pritchard, a TJ McConnell, somebody in that elk, like a older Mike Conley that can like command an offense and generate some points. But at the same time, you need one guard, I think, like a Jamal Murray that can get you 15 some nights and 35 on others. So we'll look at this draft class because they have the 4th and 8th pick in the draft on Wednesday night, and then they have the 35th pick on Thursday night, and then depending on what they do with their contracts, Devontae Graham, Keldon, Vassell, Zach Collins, we can look at free agency. Let's look at the draft board. This draft is so fascinating. I have no idea where anybody's going to go. I'm not speculating.
I can't wait. I love it.
But you just tell me what names make you excited about putting next to him. Let's just assume there's 2 guaranteed spots in the starting lineup for these guys. You tell me who you think, and I'll tell you who I think. All right? We'll stop one at a time.
I like it. So I want shooting, like I said, but I think that can be addressed more so in free agency, where you have people that you don't have to develop, you don't have to work and integrate them into the game. You can just get them in for shooting, right? And I think that there's some players available for that.
Luke Kennard.
So I really, but like you said, I really want length, and then I want a guard in some capacity. So I think at 4, I want whatever French dude is there. I think that's kind of what I've ultimately landed on. I think they're all long. I think they all are upside potential. I think that they're the prototype that you're looking for in the league, right? Huge, like long, 6'9", 6'10". Ricochet can shoot the ball. He's versatile defensively. Like I think if he's there at 4, it feels like that's kind of and I don't obviously have any intel, but that feels like the gut feeling that it's a lock that they take him.
Okay.
You want me to go 4 and 8, or do you just want to talk about 4 first?
Well, so we'll I want to do the prospects. I didn't even put Ricochet down because I figured he'd be gone 1 through 3, right? But the best shooter in the class is Reed Shepherd, and he's a 6'1.5" white kid from Kentucky. Jumps out the gym, great athlete, but I mean, he had one of the best college shooting seasons ever. Period. Like, regardless of being a freshman, like, I think he was like 50% from 3, which is just ridiculous. Yeah. And he's demonstrated the range. Is that something you're comfortable with? Like a 6'1" white guy? Like, you know, he's going to get picked on defensively, a la Peyton Pritchard, but who knows? Maybe this guy's the next generational shooter. Like, is that a guy you're willing to take a risk on?
I am, because I am. I don't think he'll be there at 4. I think that'd be something they have to move up for, and I don't really want them to. I really think that he's going to go 2 or 3. Maybe not 2, because I think Sarr might, but I don't know. Everything I've been listening to, everything I've been looking at, it feels like he might go early. So, but if he doesn't, if he's there at 4, I'm not too worried about him defensively. Not because I think he's going to become a good defender. I don't, but I think Wemby really kind of takes care of that in some capacity. And you don't want to, you know, have 4 inept defenders around Wemby, but I think you can hide one person, especially with who he is down low. And I think that shooting is going to translate, and he is a hell of a shooter. And I think that he's a playmaker, and I think he could work really well with Wemby, especially with being smaller. You can't do any of those switches. It would be really difficult for a defense if they get that down. If they have a good relationship and good chemistry, I think it's really, really hard to defend that.
Okay, no, I know what you mean. So I love him. I'm very high on him. I do not want to see him in Atlanta or Washington. That's just a hellscape.
I agree.
Like, please, for the love of God, Wizards, do not waste your pick on him, because he's not going to evolve anything there. The Rockets, if they take him, you know, they have Van Vliet, Thompson, Green, Cam Whitmore. Like, they're so loaded at guard that I just don't know if there's room for him on that roster. I mean, didn't even mention Dylan Brooks. Like, they have so many guards and wings already that I think it's just there'd be an overflow there. So personally, I would love to see him fall to 4. But my favorite player in this class, Masterson, I mean, as a guy, like, I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but over the last, I'd say, month and a half, especially as a coach, I'm like borderline addicted to UConn. Like, I am obsessed with watching. Yeah. They're my favorite team, regardless of NBA or college, just to watch run an offense. And especially defensively, too. Stephon Castle is... I can't remember who did it. I can't give him credit here, but their comparison for them was mini Andre Iguodala. And I loved Iggy so fucking much. I love it. I think that's the picture perfect person. He's getting mocked at like 5'6". If he falls to 4, I just specifically talking about wings that can defend, that can score the ball. They don't need the ball to be active. He's coming from a great ecosystem at UConn. He goes to San Antonio. I just think it's essentially like Kawhi regurgitated. I think that's what it is.
It feels like a Spurs pick, doesn't it?
Very much so.
Like everything that he Bowen, is and how he plays.
Green.
Like, it feels like a hard-nosed San Antonio type player. Yeah, I like Castle a lot. I'd be really in on him, especially. I don't know. This draft is so hard to get a gauge on, because I think 1 through 10 is
it's up in the air.
I don't know who's going to go where, which is what's so exciting. But yeah, I don't. I would be in on Castle, and then you have Buzelis listed, and that's someone that I've kind of been rising on more and more, and just watching him, and I think his game could really, really develop.
Yep. So we've already talked about Shepherd. We've already talked about him. He's probably my 4th favorite player in this class. The comp for him I had was Franz Wagner Light. Like, this is a guy who can create his own. He is not much of a jump shooter. He can get to a mid-range or a floater, but loves to attack the rim. Very slimy getting to the rim, like slithery. Like, I just love the way that he plays, and he'll bang on somebody too. Like, nobody expects like the 6'9". I'm not sure where he's from, actually. Buzelis. He might be
he's explosive, me either.
But I mean, he's a fun watch. So he was originally committed at Duke and then decommitted and ended up going to the G League Ignite.
That's right.
And the G League Ignite has been borderline poisonous for some of these projects. Like, you think of Kuminga. Jalen Green worked out a bit. Like, he started to explode the second half of last season. But
even like Ron Holland in this draft.
Right.
Ron Holland was potentially the number 1 guy, and just kind of faded into irrelevance this season.
I didn't even write him
down. He was injured for a little bit.
I didn't write him down for number 4 or number 8, and he was chalked in at 1, 2, or 3 ahead of the regular season this year.
It seemed like it was kind of a certainty.
What do you think about, speaking of UConn, just going Twin Towers here and taking Donovan Clegan? Because the Wemby experience of the 4 this year, it wasn't the best. Like, they looked a lot better with him at the 5. But is that because of Zach Collins, or is that because he's just meant to be a 5, and then you put Clegan out there, and it's just like, what are we doing?
So I've thought about it, and I think it'd be really fun, and I do think it would work. I'm not a big Zach Collins guy at all. I think you can make it work with 2 bigs with Wemby, but I just don't think that's maximizing the potential upside of this draft.
Okay.
I think Clegan feels very safe to me, and I think you know what you're going to get, and I just don't think it's necessarily what the Spurs need to be spending high draft capital on.
Devil's advocate?
Because there's so much that they need to fill. Like, they need a floor general, they need shooting, they need hard-nosed defense, they need wings. Like, it just feels like it would be kind of you're throwing away one of those picks when it's not high upside. I would rather them take a gamble on somebody that they really think could be a superstar.
I hear you. Devil's advocate. Does anybody even bother trying to score at the rim if those 2 dudes are on the court? Like, does anybody even try? And also on the offensive end, like, Wemby proved he can handle the ball in a pick and roll. Imagine him and Clegan running a pick and roll, because he's fluid. We talked about Sohan in the short roll. Clegan was asked to do a lot offensively at UConn. He was not just a go from block to block, sit in the dunker spot guy. They would move him around the court as a screener, as a passer. Like, I think he's tremendously talented from everything that I've heard, like, from pods and stuff like that. Like, he's a winner. He's got the attitude. He's got the mentality. So I don't know. I kind of love the idea of it.
Where do you want to see him land? If it's not San Antonio.
If it's not San Antonio, maybe a Memphis. I mean, Memphis is at 9. You pair him with Jaren. That's another just crazy shot blocking duo. If you can't get there, Charlotte's got Mark Williams. The Pistons are loaded with Duran and Wiseman and Stewart.
They can't take another big.
The Rockets already have fucking Şengün. I'm not sure. I mean, he could go to the Wizards, and
that's what I mean. Like,
he'll improve the floor of the Wizards, but like, I hate that franchise. That's a popular
I don't
franchise.
like that pick for them either.
Yeah, fuck. Yeah, he's not going to see the ball.
I think they need to swing for the fences too. But yeah,
I'm just out on them as a whole. They need to rebrand. They need to go back to the 2007 Wizards logo, because this one that they have right now, like when they switched it during the John Wall Beal era,
is not working.
It does not work. I hate that shit. I can't stand it. All right,
it's all been negative vibes. It's been bad.
A couple of other older guys.
The last guy I wanted to mention was Carter.
That was my guy.
I love Devon Carter. Yeah, if they don't take I don't want them to take them together, but if they don't get Castle, I really like Devin Carter.
Ooh, I didn't think about them together. That's interesting.
I don't know if I'd like that.
What, too much defense?
I think, not enough, I guess, shot creation and scoring of their own in a way. And I don't know. I think that's kind of addressing a similar spot or a similar hole.
There's redundancy there. I know what you mean. So it sounds like in your dream world, they're taking one of these 2 wings or one of these 3 wings, Buzelis, Carter, maybe Connect. We haven't mentioned him. And then you want a guard. You want a dynamic guard. You want a Reed Shepherd or you want Dillingham, because we haven't talked about Dillingham. There was a funny.
He's like thirsty for San Antonio, man.
Dude, he's just thirsty to get shots up. He's been itching for the league since he was like 15. I remember somebody showed me him last year, and he just seemed automatic. And then I watched him at Kentucky. He's a little bit undersized. He's a little small. And my curiosity with him is like, is he just destined to be Bones Highland, or could he be Lou Williams, or is there another level that he can get to where he's like Diet Kyrie? Because that's really what you're looking at with a 6'1" guard. Like, he's going to have to put the ball in the rim because he's only, I think, like 160 pounds or something like that. Like, he's going to have to bulk up, and he's going to have to get serious buckets if he wants to stay on the court. Because, I mean, he's, 3 inches shorter than Kobe White. Like, that's a small guy in the NBA. Kobe looks small out there. He looks dinky out there if he's Dillingham.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been my thing with Dillingham. If he doesn't hit, he's going to be out of the league. I mean, in a couple of years, like if he doesn't have that, I don't think he's somebody that, I think it's all or nothing for someone like Dillingham. I don't think he can play his style in a way that's average in the NBA. So I like
he
him,
could,
but I think that's kind of like a good.
he could be like Deion Waiters and like live in the league for like 11 years just as a bucket
That's
getter
not
off the
valuable to
bench.
me.
But
Yeah,
yeah, that's not what you want in a
that's not
lottery
valuable to
pick.
me.
You don't want that with a 4th or 8th pick.
Yeah,
Can we go back to
right.
Klingon for just 1 second? So the
Yeah.
Thunder, I think, are like, I mean, it's too early to do this because they just made, the conference semifinals, and, they're ahead of schedule. They look amazing, and they're going to be one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the West next year, right? But I think if you're San Antonio, you got to think to yourself just a little bit, let's take a guy so the Thunder don't get him. And that's why I'm coming back to Klingon for a second, because the Thunder are at 12, and I think if they put Klingon alongside Chet, they're just going to be living my wet dream for the Spurs, where it's like, who dare attack the rim against them? So is that ridiculous? Is that too forward thinking for me as like the Spurs fake general manager here to be worried about who the Thunder take?
No. I'm always kind of worried about the Thunder. They're kind of on a similar trajectory. The Thunder are obviously a little bit ahead, but it feels like
bit. Yeah, I think it feels just fucking. They had like third MVP. Yeah,
undersold it a little bit, but I just feel like that's destined to be the rivalry. Maybe it's going back to the 2010s when it was kind of Duncan's last stand, Manu Tony versus the up and coming Thunder. Just kind of, it feels like fate in a way for us to just continually beef with Oklahoma City. So yeah, I'm worried about Oklahoma City. I don't want them to have any more success. I didn't like them getting Caruso. I'm done with it.
Okay, now if you don't get a floor general at 4 or 8, there are some guys in the 35 range. 35 is a good pick in this draft. Like, I know this draft isn't top heavy, but I think that it does have a lot of talent in it. Jamal Shed stays in Texas, kid from Houston, Big 12 player of the year.
I like him.
Serious dog mentality. Could that guy just be TJ McConnell? I think so. And if you get that guy at 35, I think that's a tremendous steal. I think that, the thing with the NBA draft, the NFL draft even, is that, like, I think actually more with the NBA, the player, it depends so much on where they go, right? Like, that is
absolutely
like, if Jamal Shed gets drafted by the Pistons or the Wizards, he's going to get buried, and he's not going to be in a winning culture. Yeah. But if you have him as the head of your snake on defense, and you have Wemby as the tail, I mean, that's a nightmare defensively. Like, if he's just Davion Mitchell, if he's TJ McConnell, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think was he injured in the tournament? I feel like
he got injured against Duke.
He might have been the one that got injured.
People were talking shit that we only won because he got injured in the first half. And that might be true. It might not be, but it's the way it goes.
But you could see how it totally changed Houston's game plan. It changed their confidence, their comfortability. Like, once he was gone, it didn't feel like Houston really stood a chance at all.
I wasn't scared anymore. And it was still like a 6-point game. And I just wasn't scared. But I was like, they don't have Shed. And he's a guy that rises to the moment. He's savvy. He's going to do whatever it takes to last in this league too. Like, I'm taking him over Patrick Beverley tomorrow, just because, like, I know that he's 11 years younger and he's gonna have the same mentality as Pat. I'm just gonna bet on his athleticism over that. Couple of other guys at 35 that I like: PJ Hall, the Clemson kid, crafty scorer in the post. Like, he's not gonna be a starter for you guys, but 7th, 8th guy. Kevin McCullough Jr. from Kansas. I am buying all of his stock. I love the kid at Texas Tech.
Yeah,
he is kind of just a savvy wing, and I was telling everybody throughout the entire year, I'm like, the Nuggets are going to draft him at like 44, and he's going to be, a guy that wins them a playoff game next year. Like, he's just going to be Christian Brown, or he's going to be better Strother. He's going to be somebody like that that's just like, oh, this motherfucker. Like, he made 6 threes against the Lakers in the first round. Like, Kevin McCullough, the Kansas kid. 2 other kids from Arizona, Pele Larson, I think he's Australian, and Kashad Johnson, good athletes. And then going back to UConn, I just love Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer, their backcourt. One white dude, one black dude, savvy vets, know how to get to their spots. I think that they both just last in the league. If you can't tell, like, UConn was just like, it was a wet dream for me this year. I love watching UConn
feels like Georgia to me in the NFL draft, where it's 1,000%. Like, if you take a UConn prospect, that's a good pick. That feels like a safe pick. You're going to get someone that works their ass off and is intelligent.
Yeah, a Jordan Davis, a George Pickens, a Jalen Carter. Guys. Yeah, he's going to be one of those guys. And then the last guy I'm suggesting, this leads us into the 2024 free agents to target. Bronny? Number 35. Not to have Bronny in your rotation, but to say, hey, LeBron, we know that you just hired JJ Redick as the head coach of the Lakers. But you've always had this loving relationship with Popovich, and we have the best prospect since you on our team.
Yep.
How'd you like to come play with Wemby and your son? And then maybe we go get like a Chris Paul or something like that from the Warriors if they don't re-sign him. And you can banana boat bro it up. The last 2 banana boat bros. Is this getting you going? Like, is this something you're a little bit fired up about? Because I was dreaming it today, and I was like, God damn, that will look good.
Yeah, LeBron opting out definitely made me think, like, what if they get him? What if it's just a passing of the torch? And you're right. I mean, Popovich and LeBron have always had this really strong relationship, it feels like. It feels like there's a lot of mutual respect there. And what better way to end his career than going out with the GOAT, you know?
I mean, I talked about it on the Bulls pod with Grant. I was like, LeBron needs an old, wise coach that he respects. He doesn't need somebody that's his age. He doesn't need a peer to coach him. He needs a Steve Kerr. He needs a Greg Popovich.
He's a coach.
And I believed it, too. And I still do believe it. And it's like, you know, and I think it's also the 10-year anniversary this summer of them losing to the Spurs in the finals when he was with the Heat. And then he goes to Cleveland.
Yep.
Maybe it's time for another embarkment. You know, you play for 3 of the most historic franchises of the last 30 years in the NBA. You play for the Heat, you play for the Lakers, you play for the Spurs, and you single-handedly built the Cavs into a historic franchise by yourself. You end your journey with the Spurs. Could be fascinating. But realistic targets for them. OG Anunoby declined his player option today with the Knicks.
I saw that. Yeah.
Fascinating. Very fascinating. You want a guy that can guard. You want a guy that can knock down threes.
I kind of just assumed. I don't know if it's just to opt out, to opt into a bigger deal, but I don't know. He'd opt out. I was like, that kind of fits a need. I like him a lot.
Kind of. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Knocks down corner threes. He's going to get the most open shots of his career. And then a couple of other guys.
My only thing is his durability.
Sure.
It feels like he's always missing a substantial amount of time during the season, which I guess isn't really that big of a deal as long as he's back for the playoffs. But I don't know. That would be one thing that kind of makes me.
Durability isn't going to matter when he only has to play 19 minutes a game because you have Devin Carter and Stephon Castle. Like he's going to be the third wing in your lineup. And then 2 other guys that I highlighted were just Miles Bridges from Charlotte. Sneakily played 36 minutes per game on that. I mean, he's not resigning in Charlotte. He can't because of the culture. He's too talented. And I think he wants to play meaningful basketball. I think. I'm willing to bet on that. And then the other guy is Derrick Jones Jr., another lefty. 2 guys that I talked about with Grant for the Bulls. I just like these guys. I think that they can play on both ends of the floor, and I think they can make a difference for a solid team.
Yeah, I like both those guys a lot. And, you know, like you're saying, they're both fitting the need. And Derrick Jones Jr. is another hard-nosed defender that I think, I don't know, would really kind of start them on their way towards that team building that you mapped out for them, where you can never have too many good wing defenders and catch and shoot perimeter guys. So I love it. Okay. This next guy, though, this is the one that I've kind of been more intrigued with.
Who?
Go ahead.
No, you. Who?
The next guy you have listed.
Chris Paul?
On your form, CP3.
Yeah. You want to do the Chris Paul? Yeah, okay, cool.
I like him. Yeah, so I'm interested.
He's an adult to run the offense. I mean, I'm just the biggest Chris Paul stan there is. I don't care what's happened the last 2 years. Doesn't
that's
make
your Mike Conley guy.
Yeah, that's the guy, right? You know, he's going to be 38 or 39 years old, which isn't great. But if you sign him for 2 years, $8 million a year,
let him ride it out.
He's just such a drastic upgrade over Devontae Graham, who's going to chuck, you know, per 36 minutes, he's going to get 22 shots up for some fucking reason. Like, he's just so much better than Devontae Graham. He's somebody to come in and actually put Wemby in the right spots, get him easy looks. Even at this advanced age.
Yeah, he's a professional basketball player. Yeah. And like you said, he doesn't need to come in and be 25 minutes a game and be a huge scoring threat. Just come in, manage the offense, be the Mike Conley guy, and end your career with Pop and Wemby.
Dude, average 11 points and 9 assists. He could do that in his sleep with his roster, dog. He could do it with this roster right now. He could get Vassell open looks. He could get Keldon open looks. I'm in on it. All right. Before we get out of here, it would not be a podcast if we didn't make a ridiculous prediction. Okay, so I want you to give me a prediction over the next 5 years of Wembanyama's career, age 20 to 25. I just want, what do the awards look like? What do the accolades look like? Does he win any MVPs? How many? Because I think he definitely wins at least one. Defensive Players of the Year, does he win? All NBA teams, how many does he make and which ones, first, second, or third? And then all defense teams. I think we can chalk him in Let's just assume he's healthy.
5 years starting now.
5
like
years.
The next 5 years.
Starting this year. This year will be the first year. So 2024, 25 through 29, 30.
I'm getting one MVP in there.
I agree.
I feel like at some point, by the end of next season, I think he's in the discussion.
Yep.
Especially if San Antonio can somehow hang around in the West. Them making the playoffs would be a win next year.
6th seed.
I think if that happens, I think he's in the discussion. So I think by year 3, year 4, he's really entering the season being talked about as an MVP candidate.
Okay. So we got one MVP in the next 5 years.
And then I think defensive player of the year, you got to go. I'm going 3 here. Next 5 years, I'm going 3. And I feel like I'm kind of underselling it. But the way he finished this year and just how, I don't know if anyone alters the game defensively like he does already. Like 1 year into the league, and he is just this transformative player. You couldn't leave him off of first team defense. How many rookies do you say that about? You could not leave him off of. You know what I mean?
That's the one area of basketball all rookies struggle with. All rookies can, find a way to get their shit off as rookies, but they can't play defense. They don't know how to. So I did it while we were talking. I pulled just what were his numbers the last 40 games of the year. He averaged 4 blocks per game. That means in the last 40 games of the year, he had 160 blocks. 4.0 blocks per game his last 40 games. He had 160 blocks. That's ridiculous. That's 2 blocks per game for an entire season.
I know. It's insane.
It's unbelievable. Okay.
So I don't see barring injury how he doesn't consistently be 1 or 2 in defensive player of the year for almost the rest of his career.
I agree. I completely agree.
Ridiculous.
All right, you want to get really ridiculous?
So then obviously I think he clean sweeps all defense first
all
team.
Defense first
5
team.
years.
What about the All-NBA teams? How many All-NBA first teams? Does he get 1? Does he get 2? Does he get 3? Does he get to a second team or a third team? Because he's going to have to beat out one of Embiid, Giannis, or Jokic for those spots, right? I think you chalk in Jokic for the next 3.
Yeah. I think two first place finishes or 2 first team. Next year, I think it's third team. I'll go 2, 2, and 1. So I'll go 2 first, 2 second,
and 1 third.
And a third.
Okay. All right. So he's gonna have to beat out, the Bams of the world, the Giannis's. He'll be considered. Yeah, it'll be centers because it's 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center now. Or is it positionless?
Yep.
It might just be positionless now. But it'd be, I think,
for defense.
I think for just all NBA first team.
Oh yeah, it's positionless.
But at the same time, they're not going to put 4 centers on. I don't think they would do Wemby, Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. They're going to be we have to put Luka on or something like that, or Shea. All right, and then the last one, any finals MVPs? Any Western Conference Finals MVPs? Now that's an award.
Yeah, haven't gotten used to that.
Next 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, I know. You're mulling.
Yes. I think not Finals MVP. I think
Western Conference Finals MVP.
They can get to the finals. I think they can make it in 5 years. Already seen what Wemby is. Trusting the Spurs organization, because the biggest thing here, especially this offseason, they don't have to rush. There's not a sense of them really needing to speed things up. You look at next year's draft, 2025, it's loaded, and they have potentially 4 or 5 picks. So they're not going to have to take all of those, but they are just in such a good position to really take the team where they want it. And I think as long as Wemby stays healthy and he keeps developing, man, I don't want to put a limit on this thing. It's exciting.
You're right. I'm going to say 0 Western Conference Finals MVPs or Finals MVPs because Cooper Flagg is going to win both of them. He's going to win Western Conference Finals MVP and Finals MVP.
Right. On San Antonio when Atlanta has the number 1 pick next year too.
And that's why they're not taking Klingon, because they know that they're going to have a 4, the perfect 4 for Wemby's 5.
There you go.
It's beautiful.
There you go.
All right, Masterson, thank you for joining. This has been awesome. Really fun.
Man.
Pumped for the draft. Yeah, tomorrow night. So everybody tap in. We should have some kind of reaction episode, maybe Friday, just kind of recapping Wednesday and Thursday night. But thank you guys for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. And enjoy the NBA draft. We'll see you on the other side. Peace out. I'm loving the pop off.